Hello everyone, my name is ex-Lyft. Welcome to Mobile System Design, and on today's video we're going to discuss how to design mobile application for X or Twitter or Facebook, Instagram, or even TikTok. Maybe have some Instagram Reels representation for it. So let's think about those applications and specifically on mobile domain area. If you learn these, you will be able to design on your interview or maybe a real application, any feed basically, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X or Twitter, whenever. So the devil in details. Let's deep dive. If you like it, like, share this video, and if you have some suggestions or maybe ideas for the following next videos, comment under this video. In this video we're going to talk about mobile system design, specifically because I found a lot of videos in internet that relate to server or backend, but just a few that relate to mobile domain area, specifically how to design iOS and Android application, doesn't matter, and the focus in this scope, and this is exactly what you need if you're going to go to interview for fun companies, for big tech companies, and have interview for mobile as mobile engineer. You can ask how I can design a different application the same way. So we have on the one side it's like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram feed. On the other it's Instagram Reels and TikTok feed. So it's completely different stuff, but actually it's not. Because at the end of the day, everything is just a list of items. In the whole screen for the Facebook or Instagram, you have a feed of items, the same items on the screen. But if you're going to the Reels or TikTok, you have full screen, but only one item on this screen. Just one item, next page will be next screen, next item, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't really matter from the design perspective, which is like the feed where you can see couple of items in the list, or the feed where you can see just only one item for the whole page, for the whole screen. So almost the same, and the difference may be in some details for video, because we have to download it, show it, play it, and some text representation, image, so on and so forth. API should be almost the same for both application, for the video application and the text or image application, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, let's design it. At first, let's talk about the rules for the system design interview. Rules. Have to communicate with your interviewer. At first, let's think about that your interviewer is junior engineer, not PM or manager or on the higher role. He or she is a junior, and you have to tell them how to create this project, how to simplify it to I don't know, to make them understand what you're telling and create such system. Maybe they will implement it and you just only architect. So treat your interviewer as junior engineer. The second thing that we have to keep in mind that there is no correct or right and bad answers. So during the interview, you have to provide and communicate your ideas, your knowledge, provide some signals. We'll talk about the signals a bit later. So just communicate with your interviewer, and this is crucial point. So there is no correct answers, but for any idea that you have, provide trade-offs and speak about idea A and idea B and why you choose idea A, for example. Provide right signal. It means that for any position on any level, so your interviewer wants you show some specific signals for a specific position, so they can be different for staff engineer, senior, junior, middle. So always ask clarifying questions, because it's also the main point that you have to keep in mind, because not any interview starting with everything that you need to know. Ask everything, clarify everything. It's better to ask a lot of questions than create or solve the wrong task. And for sure, at first, Let's start with requirements. Let's start collect requirements. It can be functional, non-functional. We also can discuss about API, some stuff related to power management, security, and so on and so forth. But let's do it step by step. Let's start with functional requirements. So what it can be, like what function our application need to support. We have to ask about it, about any your idea from your interviewers. Do you need to support likes? Your answer and your interviewer can say, yeah, it's better for you to decide. I'm not that PM. And you have to decide, is it easier to implement or it's like a huge implementation, depends on the scope. You have to ask your interviewer, you're going to implement this application as MVP or it should be like a huge product with a big team, but let's discuss the team in the future. And let's think about that you create MVP and keep only key functionality for it, the most valuable stuff that you can provide for the users. So what we need to do for the likes? At first, let's just show it and do not provide some functionality to actually give some likes. So just show it. Also, you can, about the likes, you can also ask your interviewer, it's like a crucial point that we just show, or we also need some functionalities to edit. Maybe it's also a part of requirements from the interviewers, but maybe not. Let's better to provide your ideas, what you have to do it or just omit right now. The next thing that we also do or not do is to show tags. So let's keep it out of scope. Text doesn't provide much value for the users, but it's like takes time for implementation. So if you implement images, text, or TikTok with videos, so we have to provide and show images or maybe video. By the way, if we show video, it's better to also discuss about it. For example, if we show something for the video, we have to use some streaming. It can be some format that we can support. You can also suggest that it's like HLS or Dash. So it means that on the client side you receive a playlist with a lot of small videos and load them and play them one by one. All the videos will depend on the bitrate, screen size, and so on and so forth. If you just receive some images, it's better to think about different device sizes, especially if we're talking about Android. So we have multiple devices, some of them are small, some of them are huge, so on and so forth. So it's better to have some functionalities to resize images before you show it on the client. So just to for economizing the traffic on your API, just send and receive small images if you have just small phone and so on and so forth. Think about some functionality for the resize. It's usually implemented on the backend, some services, maybe as a part of CDN. Okay, what other functionalities that we want to use? So do we need to show some user information, who posted? Yeah, we might need it, to see some user information. The next thing that we also discuss is create some post. So right now we are only designing some read-only functionality to receive the list of posts and show them for the users. So create the new post is out of the scope. Out of the scope. The next thing it's like navigation for the user. For example, user can see one screen, then navigate to the other, then to show commands on the separate screen. But as far as we talking about the newsfeed, and it's also like a part of our requirements, initial requirements, so we should not showing any other screens, do not use some navigation, so navigation is also out of scope. But let's think about authorization. So we might need authorization for security, for some respect for the user, and so on and so forth. And for this, let's talk about the API. So API can support authorization. We will not implement authorization screen, it's also out of scope, but we will implement OAuth. That means for the API, we will provide some token to improve the security for our API. For the API itself, we can consider to use REST API or some protobuf. So the difference here is that REST is simple for the JSON response, so it's easier to implement. It's also easier for the backend team to implement because it's a commonly used thing. A lot of libraries and frameworks that also support REST API. Protobuf is kind of more complicated, but it also provides some bonuses like its small size of the package, its binary protocol, it's useful for the big responses. So we might use protobuf here, but initially. So for the MVP, let's choose REST API plus JSON, which is a really simple one, and think about the protobuf eventually. And also, keep our backend team time to learn how to use the protobuf on the backend and so on and so forth. Also create some CI/CD tools to auto-generate the client code because protobuf also provide this ability, so it's a really good one. Let's talk about the pagination that we need to use. Pagination because we will scroll this list for a long time. But about the type of pagination we will discuss later when we will design the API response. So we will have a couple of types of pagination like cursor-based, some offsets, and so on and so forth. Let's discuss it a bit later. And non-functional requirements. What it can be. So we will talk about the daily active users for our application. So we can ask how many users we will have for this application we expect to have. So right now it's maybe like 1,000, but eventually it will be like millions. And also the team size. So you can ask why the team size and daily active users are so important for our application, because we are not the backend. So why this is important? So the team size is important to scalability, and we will create a multimodal application with architectures that different engineers, different teams will use and work in a parallel. So let's think about it from the initial step. And if we have a small team of 1 or 2 engineers, we can do with monolith and then refactoring in multimodal stuff. Also, it's related to CI/CD and these kind of stuff that relate to big teams. Also think about how to provide some access right for different models, how to modify it, some build system, and so on and so forth. For the daily active users, it's more about how we can not overload our API, have to work with server better, not using long poolers. Also think about the countries. Why the countries is important for us, because it's related to image quality, depends on the network for such countries. So if we can choose different approaches, depends on the countries in our list. The next thing that we can discuss, it's batteries. Should we support long-lasting battery, or our application will be usually used for the phone or device that also in the charge mode on the plugged in outlet. but for our application it's not. So let's also think about the background work. So have to receive some push notifications, maybe some alarm pullers, foreground services, and so on and so forth. So everything that related to the battery life. Yeah, it's to this topic. And also it's good and think about A11Y accessibility. Have to make our application accessible for the users, but it's better to think about on the next iteration, next step, and keep it right now out of scope. Also, for any applications that we need to do, we need to create some analytics, and analytics usually it's crucial part, especially if we design a huge application for lots of users. So let's think about analytics and where we can implement it, what class can be used, and what layers in our architecture can communicate to analytics managers, and so on and so forth. So we gather everything and we're ready to start actually some implementation and high-level design. Let's design. Here is our main screen, maybe some post with image, some text, user, and likes. So instead of this post, it can be a video or something, but think about it, it's like a post. What we need to do, it's like our UI actually. There are a lot of types of architectures that we can use for our applications, like MVP, MVI, MVVM, and so on and so forth. We can also use clean architecture, some other design patterns, but it depends on many things, that what you actually experience to use, and for your interview choose these type of architectures that you mostly experience with, avoid some confusions, and so on and so forth. If you better know how to work with MVP, talk about MVP, not going to the RIPS or Viper or to MVI. If you better with MVI, speak about the MVI architecture, and it's applicable for everything that we need to apply for the interview. Just speak only about those things that you really know about in details. So let's choose any architecture. It can be also depends on our team history. For example, if our team and our application previously developed and we need to add one more screen, it's better to use the same architecture for the consistency. If we created something from the scratch, we can choose between different architectures, provide some pros and cons between all of them, discard them, choose one of them, and let's go on. But for simplicity, let's think about its a clear architecture and use some standard things and controllers and components that we can use for almost every architecture. So our UI will interact with some interactor, or it can be controller, or I don't know, whenever actually. So our UI will send some event to our interactor and controller, and what the controller do next. The next, our controller have to do some actions. For example, load the new page, maybe to like something, if I don't know, discuss and think that we need to support functionality, something like this. So for simplicity and also to support some different teams, different architectures, to help people work separately, let's choose a separate class. For API response, we will use a repository. Our controller will tell something repository, and eventually repository will send some information back. For our architecture, we'll use DI, dependency injection, or this such pattern that it's quite useful for testing, for scalability, to test just only one component at a time, provide some mocks for all the dependencies. It's also useful if you work with big teams and you have to separate your development. For example, one team or one developer will work on repository or some data stuff. The other developers will work on UI and so on and so forth. So we have interactor, repository, and also interactor will send some information to UI to render this UI state. It can be like different, send UI states if it's MVI, or maybe provide some direct updates for MVP or MVVM. So what else? What our repository actually need to do? First of all, let's help our repository to go to API. So it will ask our REST API and provide some result back from this API. So we can use different approaches there. For example, to fetch some data, it can be reactive approach, the same for UI as well, or we'll can use callbacks, lambdas, and so on and so forth. Depends on your language, your platform. Let's choose the way that you prefer to communicate between those objects, those classes, and yes, discuss about it. Also, it will support HTTP. It will support some caches, so we can use also API HTTP cache as easiest point, easiest solution to have some caches on the disk, on the files, instead of memory caches. In memory cache, we can also support in different classes. We discuss it separately, but for HTTP we can also use HTTP cache because it's like almost all framework that we can use to communicate between our application and server. So we receive some data from the repository, and if we're going to support some offline mode, we will use database and collect data that we receive from API. We transform it to data transfer object and convert and store in database. Also, our repository can use database directly to fetch offline data at first, show to the client for the better user experience, and then call the API. So it also means that instead of just one repository, we can have multiple objects, multiple repositories or servers that will be responsible for each operation, each service or repository. But let's keep this scheme simple and have just one object, one rectangle for repository. Also, like back from the repository. What else we can do? So for some updates for the API, for example, if we're scrolling something and our server want to tell us that we received new important data before users scroll to the next page, we can receive some updates. I think it should be out of scope for this application because it's the simplest one, so we can use WebSockets for such updates, or we can use push notification. Push notifications with different body to tell our repository that we need to update it. But I think right now we will use only simple approach, just scroll our list. If we will have some updates, we'll update it. We will also use delta updates. We'll discuss it a bit later. We will design API response. So data update will be supported by our API. What else we can use, and what class can be useful for our application? Yeah, for sure, it's analytics. Analytics will be called by our interactor or controller, the place where we have some business logic. Actually, our interactor and controller can be also like view model if you want to, especially for Android. What else we need to do? We also want to receive some updates, so we will discuss that it can be realized and implemented with WebSockets or push notifications, depends on the complexity. It's also better to have some update manager. That will be triggered when we need to receive some updates. We'll have some repository or push notifications, and then we have two ways we can update and send some call to controller, and controller will go to repository, or it can be vice versa and go to repository. But I think it's better to keep logic in the same place, and our update manager will tell our controller that it has some updates, and maybe then controller will ask repository for the delta updates for our list. So it can be that way. What else this schema is missing? So we have image here. So as far as this is an image, we have to load it. Usually we have some UI tools, UI libraries that can download images from the UI. It can be like image downloader. Downloader. Or just downloader, because we can consider to download some videos. So it can be like downloader to receive some images from CDN or maybe videos. Also, if we will use some prefetch, for example, if we talk about the Reels or TikToks, so it's better to prefetch some of the video and do not show the user some loading and spinners, make them wait till the next video is loaded. So for the prefetch, we'll also use another downloader, I believe. Downloader. And what's the best place to call it? So it can be related to interactor, controller, or view model if we're talking about the logic. But as far as this part, it's also like a piece of API and all this data layer. So let's help our repository to call the prefetch downloader. If we will have some list of images or a list of videos, it's better for the videos. Call the prefetch downloader will download something in the background. Speaking about the battery life, if we download something in the background, we also need to think how to cancel this downloader. For example, if we just scroll fast, we have to cancel previous downloads to not overload our system, our traffic, our bandwidth, and so on and so forth. And when everything is downloaded, our downloader manager or downloader, image downloader, or video downloader will easily download it and show it as an image or as a player. So player can be also different, depends on the platform. So for Android, it can be exe player or something similar. For iOS, I need to check By the way, if you want, if you know what usually we use as a video player for iOS, comment in the comment section. It will be useful for me and for the other viewers of this video. Thank you. So this is our structure and how our architecture will looks like on the high level. Our API. So what we need to do, first of all, we decide and already discussed that we use REST API plus JSON response. How it can be, like, let's call our API get request. We want version of our API. If we will implement some breakend change in the future, we just increase the version, and all the previous app versions will continue to use version 1, and it will be safe for them. So let's call our API v1 feed. And here's also another point that we can discuss. It's pagination. So we have a couple of types of pagination. For example, offset base, simple one. We want feed, and what we need to do, we can say it that offset. Then, for example, load from element number 10 and load 10 items or 12 items. The next type of pagination is cursor based. Yeah. Also get request for the feed, v1 feed. But instead of just offset, we will send some cursor information. Cursor. And it will be like a string. And then also the same like limit of 10 items. This cursor-based pagination, it can be recommended for this type of application where we have a list, and for example, if we scroll this list and depends on the user actions that happen in the current scroll, for example, I tap, or as a user I tap on a button maybe to interact with the other elements, and I need to download different types, different new items. It can be like advertisement, maybe organic posts, organic feed items, and cursor is fixing this issue. For example, if we use offset based, so for example, we have a big list on the backend, proposed items, feeds for the users, and we just take portion from the portion. But for the cursor base, we are most flexible. We just download one piece, one page, and help and allow server to decide what the next items will be, depends on this cursor that we currently loaded. And also we can think about the third type of application, at least to mention it. It's like page-based pagination. So it's like get request, v1 feed, and instead of the cursor or offset, we can say like download page number 1 or 2 and so on and so forth. It's simple. If our content is static, so we can use page-based, but as far as our content is dynamic, so let's use the cursor-based type of pagination. The next thing that we need to also describe is that we will use OAuth. It means that we will have to provide some tokens, authorization headers, barrier token, some refresh token. It's easier to use and work this authorization of with interceptors. Depends on your platforms. It can be like Alamafire for iOS or Retrofit for Android. So this entity called or class called the same like interceptors. and we will react on the code of error from the server, update token, refresh it, and so on and so forth. So let's design our actual response in JSON. So we'll have some object, JSON object, with a list of posts. List of posts is like array of items. Each element is also like an object, and this object should contain some information about this post. It can be post ID, like string ID, for more flexibility. Type, is it like image, video, or something like this? It's like enum class, or maybe integer. Depends on your style of your API, maybe some historic data that you historically created. But I prefer the enum classes with constant values like image is image, video is video, and so on and so forth. Some information about it, description, string information. What else we need for the post? It's like a date that when this post is created at, and it can be some string information or maybe timestamp, and then some information about the user. So it can be implemented in two ways. It can be object for the user that will contain information about the users like user ID, username, maybe some profile image, or it's better for right now if it also depends on your type of application and your list. If each of your item or your post or your feed has different users, or you expected and predict that each post will have different users, you can have this object right here. But if you expect some duplication, for example, multiple of posts from the same users, you can use user ID here and provide this string ID as ID, and eventually have some users object. Also, it will be like array object, and only here we'll have some information about the user, like user ID string, then what we need, name of the user, also string, and some profile image or avatar image, also like a string. It will be URL to download. But we need this separate object if we'll expect some duplication in users from the post lists. If we don't have such application, it's better to have a user object right here. So it will reduce the complexity of our API, so it also will reduce some amount of errors that can be happen on the client side, where we combine and these two arrays of users and post all together. But as far as we can have duplications, let's do the users list as separate object. So the next thing that also related to the post is like image, but we also said that it's better to have some image for particular device. So depends on the device size. We can do it in two ways. So we can provide device size here as a parameter. Size, like small, medium, large, or maybe some particular size in pixels. The other option is to receive the array or maybe the list of images here. And I think on my point of view, it's better options like a small image URL or thumbnail, maybe thumbnail medium, and large, and download one of these image depends on screen size on the device, and API will be the same, so we can easily cache it according to just the cursor, something like this, not involve device size into this. And what else we need for the post? It can be likes count, and this one is number. So here it is. Nothing fancy. That's it for this API, but we also can and have to put another thing into this. It's pagination. So for this pagination, we will add pagination object because we use the cursor-based pagination. And for this pagination, we will use next cursor and previous. And when user scroll up or down, we just provide the value from the next cursor to the cursor, or the previous, the same as the cursor parameter. Here is for the pagination. We also can give here another meta information about the page, like items left, or how many items loaded, the last loaded data. It can be useful as well for the delta updates. So, and as far as we touch this topic about the delta updates, let's think about the API for the delta updates. Delta updates, it means that on some point of time, our application receives some notification, maybe it's push or from the WebSocket that some posts updated, maybe another user also liked it, and we also have to increase the like counts, or maybe some posts that already deleted and the other user don't want you to, the other users or their friends to see those posts. So we have to update the current list with delta updates. So delta updates also like a get request for the same one. It's like a feed and updates. The parameters that we can use here: last fetched add some data. We will provide this data point when we last fetched this our API response, and receive delta updates for it. So about the API, so it will be like also object. We can have collection of new posts. Can be the same like here. But let's keep this place. Also, we have updated post. We can either use also the same object for the post, for the whole object, or we can also use just necessary information like post ID and what we actually need to update, like likes count. If user update receive more likes, and what else? Maybe another user already deleted something. And also, if we don't need here details for the post, and we can also yeah, everything is arrays. And for the post, we only need IDs. So post ID string let's keep it as an object because in the future we might need something else. And another type of information that we can be also used for false delta updates, it's last updated, and it's also like data point. That's it. So we create our API. At the end of the interview, you have time to discuss the other points that you missed, and only during this interview, maybe you want to discuss, but push them at the end of the interview. So here is the time. Usually, it's time to deep dive in some component. For example, if you have time for sure, you can take any components from your high-level diagram and dig deeper into this, discuss details about it. It can be a downloader manager, for example, or you can discuss battery life. The better you can see in the video about a file downloader, so there are a lot of information. You have to consume less amount of energy in this video in about this downloader manager. Also, you can discuss something about the security, some privacy information, and so on and so forth. Any details that you can provide in this amount of time is better. And also, at the end of the interview, you will have about 5 minutes. It's better to be prepared to answer the relevant questions for your interviewer. If it's a system design interview, it's better to ask questions about the system, about the current design, and also those questions should also highlight and provide some signals that you on aiming this type of this level, this position, and you also want to learn about their application, their project on this level, about their architecture, their structure, their how their team affect their architecture, and so on and so forth. If you like this, if you like these videos, comment on this, share this video for your friends who also looking for something like this and going to interview for the big tech companies, for fun companies. And if you have some ideas about the next videos, just comment also in the comment sections. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. Bye.